So, I live with a personality disorder. I have borderline personality disorder, which I fondly call big feelings disorder and chronically invalidated disorder. And this is a disorder that developed over the course of my life as a result of my upbringing and having a parent with a personality disorder. So, I had the perfect recipe for developing this mental disorder, and it really is, like I said, chronically invalidated disorder, because a lot of the trauma that developed into this disorder was neglect, emotional neglect, physical neglect, emotional abuse, manipulation, gaslighting, the general stuff. So if you look at the nature of my upbringing, I think it very clearly explains how the symptoms grew, because I didn't just develop random symptoms. It's not like depression where I adopted this symptom that wasn't tied to me. This was very much related to my trauma. So the symptoms are a reflection of directly what happened to me. Like I said, the neglect, for instance, asking my mom for health needs to be met and being denied, being told I'm looking for attention. That kind of invalidation is traumatizing and leads to a person seeking constant validation. When your parents are emotionally withholding, you crave emotional connection. So I would look for relationships everywhere, and I would try to force relationships into happening because I had this insane fear of being alone and needing some kind of a bond with someone to fill that hole in me, that place where I didn't have a self. I didn't have an identity, because my identity was what you needed from me. Like, if you needed me to be funny, I would be hilarious, because that was what it took to be in a relationship with another person. And without those bonds, I didn't have anything. I was lost. I would dive deep into relationships fast, with friends, with people I wanted to be friends with, try to force them to be my friend, honestly, with romantic partnerships. I could never just have a one-night stand. It always had to go somewhere. And so when I would have like a date with someone and it wouldn't follow through with anything, I'd be devastated, because I had already shaped a future with this person that I'd been on one date with. My emotions were huge, and I'd have these massive mood swings, and any slight inconvenience would ruin me, and I self-harmed over everything and anything. If I was embarrassed, I would self-harm. If someone didn't answer my text for a couple of days, I'd self-harm, because I didn't know how else to cope with my big, strong feelings. I needed to quiet them down, and I chose risky behaviors. I acted out sexually and almost used that as like a self-harm way of coping, because I chose to put myself in situations where I was like sexually promiscuous and would regret it, and knew going into it I would regret it, and would still do it because I felt like I was worth so little that I deserved to be punished through having shitty sex. And none of this seemed like a mental issue to me. It definitely seemed like a lot of toxicity, that's for damn sure, but I didn't peg it as a mental health problem, because this wasn't my mind per se. This was my behavior. This was my feelings. This was my relationships with others. It wasn't the same as depression that affects your psyche quite literally. It is more nuanced when it's your entire personality, because it seeps into every aspect of your life. It affects every single thing in your life. It affects how you perform in school. It affects how you fumble with opportunities and burn bridges and, completely destroy any chance you have at succeeding, because I was so great at that. I was great at sabotaging myself. I was great at beating myself up, and it never seemed like a mental health problem. It was a me problem. This is a very common issue with people who have personality disorders. It is very hard to diagnose a personality disorder, any of them, because people with personality disorders don't tend to see a problem. They might see problems in areas of their life, like, oh man, I keep getting passed up for that, what do you call it, a promotion because I have this bad attitude. They don't see that as a mental health problem. It's, like I said, it's a me problem. So every problem in your life, you may not even realize is directly related to you and your actions and how you interact and behave in the world. You may think that it's everyone else's fault, and that may even be part of the personality disorder. But essentially, it is very difficult to diagnose personality disorders because people don't see it. They don't realize there's a problem. They don't think they have a problem. Some personality disorders even tell you that everyone is the problem but you, and that you are flawless, you are amazing, you are perfect, you are the best. The thing is, what gets a lot of people diagnosed is other issues, because people will go into therapy to treat their depression or their anxiety or whatever other co-occurring disorder there may be, because there are a lot of co-occurring disorders. And the therapist or whatever doctor may pick up on the fact that there's something else there, and they may start to see signs and they may start to investigate that. And over time, it can become apparent that there's a much bigger issue going on than just the depression that they came in for. There's actually a personality disorder. This is kind of what got my foot in the door in getting a diagnosis, because I was having symptoms and I didn't know what they were from, but I knew there was some kind of an issue because these symptoms were big and they could not be ignored, and they were significantly diminishing my quality of life. It was bad. And so I didn't necessarily want a diagnosis. I wanted to fix what I thought was anxiety. I had these mood episodes or tantrums or meltdowns, whatever you want to call it. Essentially, I would blow the fuck up, and any little thing would trigger me and I would go off. Like, I would break things. I once punched my head through a wall, not my fist, my head. And let me tell you, that was very satisfying. I had so much adrenaline when I would rage out that I could break things with great ease. I once ripped a cabinet door off its hinges easily. I once ripped the towel rod out of the wall in the bathroom easily. It was like cutting through warm butter. And this was devastating to my apartment, to my head, to my mind, in my head. And I needed to stop this because it was to the point I couldn't even go out in public. Anytime I went out in public, I would blow up and I would scream in front of strangers. And the worst thing in the world is when people who don't know what's going on try to help you, because they always make it worse, always. And I developed agoraphobia. And my therapist started to see that these big anxiety issues were actually borderline. Unfortunately, I was unaware of the diagnosis for a really long time, because somewhere in the mix, I went psychotic. I do have schizoaffective disorder. And so I was diagnosed during all of that. And after coming out of psychosis, couldn't really comprehend a lot. So when I was told that I had borderline, I didn't really get that. It was something I heard but didn't process. So I went on for years not realizing that I had this disorder despite being diagnosed, and this did nothing for me because I got no help for it. I did not resolve any of my issues. They ultimately came back, and after years of stifling the rage, it did erupt when I was in my current relationship. Aside from all this, I am an addict, and the thing I loved about being an addict was the ability to suppress my emotions. And with the big emotions that come with borderline, there was nothing more appealing to me than drugs to suppress my emotions. So from the time I was originally diagnosed to the time I did get diagnosed again, I was in these little drug sobriety sabbaticals where I would be sober for a while, then use for a while, then sober for a while. And I would have these stretches of time where I just didn't have emotions because I had done away with them. And the thing about that is that you don't exactly get rid of them, you just stuff them down. So when you do give yourself the time to get sober and let those feelings out, they come crashing. There's this amazing metaphor that I love about early sobriety, which is that if you were to be in addiction, let's say you were driving a station wagon and all of your baggage is literal and it's in the back of the station wagon. You have camping gear, you have boxes of books, you have everything you own in the back of the station wagon, and you're driving along just fine. That's you suppressing your emotions, and it works for a while until it doesn't. You stomp the brakes, and that's you getting sober, and everything from the back of the car comes flooding to the dashboard, and all of a sudden you have every single emotion that you've been keeping behind you right there in your face. With borderline, that's a lot, and it is pretty unmanageable, I gotta say, and you need a lot of help getting through that, because the longer I stayed sober, the worse my emotions got, to the point where I was unemployable and couldn't hold a job for more than like 3 weeks. And it wasn't just because of the rage, it was because of the anxiety, the sadness, the grief, any emotion possible. Even the good ones were too big to handle and they were unsustainable. There was no way I could live in that emotion without completely depleting myself. So I was back in that place of bordering on agoraphobia, not able to leave the house and raging out again. And I would rage every single day, multiple times a day, and it would take hours out of my day. I would be crying, I would be emotionally exhausted, I would be in bed completely depleted, as I said, and it was a pattern. It would not stop. I went to therapy again to deal with these symptoms that I didn't realize were a disorder, and again got diagnosed. Fortunately, I was able to see the signs this time because my fiance, who I had then been with for 2 years, has borderline and was recovering from it himself. And when we had first started dating, it was bad. And I learned real quick what it looks like to handle a person with borderline, to be in a relationship with someone with borderline, and how to navigate that, how to help them and help yourself and have distance emotionally. You're not like enmeshed. Because it's very easy with a borderline to adopt a codependent role. And I kind of switched places with him where he got better and I got worse. And it was a role reversal. He was all of a sudden the one handling me and navigating my crises. And I recognized that everything I'd seen him go through, I was now going through. After getting diagnosed, I was able to look back over my life and see all of the patterns and all of the areas that had been affected by my personality disorder. I had not realized that it was so far and widespread, that it had touched everything. And after learning about the truth of my childhood, because PTSD does a great job of masking what really happened, I realized that it had been abusive and it had its effects, and those effects had manifested as borderline personality disorder. Being constantly told to stifle my emotions and to grow thick skin and build a spine did nothing for my psyche. Being told that when I asked for help that I was looking for attention did nothing for my psyche. Being told that my siblings' needs were more important than mine, so mine needn't be addressed because theirs were a priority, did nothing for my psyche. It resulted in borderline because when you grow up in a household that is designed to accommodate a person with a personality disorder that is the caregiver and the responsible adult, you are being raised in a household that will not accommodate your needs. It's too busy accommodating theirs, and yours get cast aside. This was a big pill to swallow, but it was ultimately necessary in taking that first step towards recovering from borderline. And I have been working diligently on recovering for the past 2.5 years, I want to say, and it has been monumental. like I've been saying this whole time, the rage was the biggest issue. Rage is massive when you have borderline. It's one of the more debilitating symptoms. And for me, it is disabling. My rage is disabling because it results in property damage and agoraphobia and losing jobs. Not necessarily losing, just not being able to handle work. So I have been doing a lot of work on myself outside of therapy. I got a new therapist because the one who diagnosed me was ultimately not fit to treat me. She was not adequate. She actually made my life a hell of a lot worse. So I got a new therapist who's been doing EMDR with me, and that has been helping immensely. It's been torture, but it's helping. I have taught myself a lot of dialectical behavioral therapy, and I have designed like all of these mechanisms for employing the tools I've picked up through DBT. I have flashcards, for instance, that have distress tolerance techniques that I would use when I would go into a rage episode to calm myself, because I needed to do that for myself. I can't have anyone else do that for me. I had to learn to do that for myself to stop that in its tracks. I went from having rage episodes every single day, multiple times a day, to maybe one a day, then one every 2 or 3 days, and then one a week, one every 10 days, to the point where I haven't had a rage episode in so long that I don't even remember. It took months to get myself weaned off of the rage. I also weaned myself off of the self-harm, and it's been over a year since the last time I self-harmed, which was immense. That was actually harder for me than quitting drugs. I have gotten to the place where I'm recognizing my role in relationships, because I see now that I have been very sick and toxic in my relationships, and I have put a lot of the work on other people. And now I'm adopting the work on my own that I need to put into relationships, and stepping up to my bar in relationships to where I need to be to keep a healthy relationship and accommodate the needs of my partner. You know, it's not all about validating me anymore, because I was in crisis for so long, needing to be taken care of, that now I'm in a position where I can take care of others. And it's huge to have internal validation and not need external validation, and to be able to have the wherewithal to look outside of myself and validate others and be there for others. I was so focused on my own problems for so long, I couldn't see straight. And now I can actually be there in my life, helping other people. There are still issues. I've got to say, one thing that still bothers me, I've got to say, is that kind of chameleon-like effect that comes with borderline of making your identity around what other people want from you. I feel that as a content creator, it can be a little unhealthy for my borderline, because I am catering to people constantly. I am constantly putting myself out there and giving an image of myself that other people want. And if people want a specific image, I will lean into that. And I need to recognize where I am, not where Carolyn Ponzoa, the content creator, is, but where I am, and not putting my entire identity into what people see of me online, but still having my own self, so that when I'm offline, I have someone to come home to, and that's me. Not having my entire life be out there on the internet. You know, I need to be able to have an identity when I'm by myself, because if my identity is a reflection of everyone around me, I'll never know who I am, and I'm learning who I am. I've actually started selling my art. I have an art business that I've been doing for almost 2 years, and that has been a huge way of recovering, actually, because I'm finding that who I am is an artist, and I love that about myself, and I'm discovering who I am through creating my own art, because the clothes I make a lot of clothes, I make a lot of knitwear, I make custom punk jackets and stuff, I make screen printed clothing. I am making my art as I'd like to wear it, and that, obviously, I like fashion, you know, that says a lot about me, and I am finding, you know, whatever design I make that I can put on a shirt is a thing that I like. And if I like it, that's something that says something about me, right? If I like it, that's something that's a piece of me. So as far as I know that I like things, I know who I am, in the sense of Carolyn likes that. That's a Carolyn-ism. If Carolyn likes flowers, that's part of Carolyn. Does that make sense? Anyway, it's been a long road, but I am stable. My psychiatrist says I'm stable, so I am stable today. I feel a lot healthier. I still struggle. As I said, there are still areas of my borderline that affect me where I'm still not quite working yet, but I have found creative avenues for that, like selling my art. And I am forever a work in progress. I always will be. I'm glad to always be a work in progress because I never want to get to the point that I'm perfect. I always want to have something to improve upon. I like the journey. I like working on myself. I like the challenges, and I'm happy in my life today, which I never thought I'd say. I'm actually genuinely happy, not manic, happy. And I have to say that putting in all of that hard work was so worth it because people don't even think I have borderline anymore. I maybe am in remission, I don't know. But when my recent therapist, who had never seen me in a rage episode before, told me that she doesn't think I have borderline, it actually triggered that invalidation mode of, bitch, you said what? Like, that actually still is a thing, the needing validation. Why else am I on the internet, right? But that is kind of where it's gotten to the point where I'm invisible. I have like an invisible disability where no one knows I'm mentally ill unless I tell them. I come across as like completely stable and healthy, and it took a lot of work, but I'm grateful to be here. Anyway, that's a bit of my experience having borderline personality disorder, what it's like living with it, what it's like been recovering from it, the diagnosis process and everything. So thank you so much for watching my video. I appreciate it very much. If you've been watching this series, I'm very grateful for that too. This is the final part in my personality disorder series. So from here on out, I will be going back to my regular content. You can look forward to more psychosis videos coming soon. This has been a really fun series. And if anyone would like me to continue making more educational or informational content, I'd be happy to make that for you. Just let me know in the comments. Also, let me know what you think of this video or the series in general. I'd love to hear it. And as always, like and subscribe if you'd like to support my channel. I'll see you all in the next one. Thanks. Bye.